You could be carrying one of the rarest modern coins without even knowing it, and collectors are actively searching for these state quarters right now. It begins with a place most people in the United States have heard about, but very few truly understand the depth of its history. A place shaped by war, resilience, survival, and sacrifice. A place where nature itself carries the memory of conflict. The Pacific Islands during World War II were not just battlefields, they were turning points in global history. And that story, powerful and emotional, was quietly preserved in something most people would never think twice about, a small coin. In 2019, the United States Mint released a special design under the America the Beautiful Quarter series, honoring the war in the Pacific National Historical Park in Guam. At first glance, it is just another quarter. The same size, the same shape, the same familiar feel of everyday currency passing from hand to hand without a second thought. But when you look closer, this coin is not ordinary at all. It carries a story carved in metal, a story that connects history, memory, and the silent bravery of those who lived through one of the most intense chapters of the Second World War. The design on the reverse side is where everything begins to change. It shows a powerful scene of determination and survival. A U.S. World War II Marine, standing firmly with his rifle, moving forward through rough terrain, while a palm tree bends behind him under the pressure of wind and conflict. The imagery is not decorative, it is emotional. It captures movement, struggle, and resilience in a single frozen moment. This is not just art. It is storytelling in metal form. And then there is the land itself, Guam, a small island in the Pacific Ocean that became a major strategic location during World War II. For many people, it may seem like just another point on the map, but for history, it represents something far greater. It represents resistance under occupation, liberation after years of hardship, and the courage of both soldiers and civilians caught in the middle of global war. The coin does not simply display geography, it preserves memory. On the other side, the obverse remains familiar, showing George Washington, the first president of the United States, as he has appeared on quarters for decades. This contrast is important. One side represents the foundation of a nation, while the other represents a specific moment in its ongoing story. Together, they create a bridge between past and present, between leadership and sacrifice, between peace and war. Most people who handle this coin in circulation never pause to think about that meaning. It moved through vending machines, cash registers, and pockets like any other quarter. But in the world of collectors, meaning is only the beginning. What truly matters is condition, rarity, and subtle differences that most eyes would never notice. Because even in modern coins, small variations can create huge differences in interest. A coin struck slightly off-center, a version with stronger than normal detail, or a specimen preserved in near-perfect condition straight from the mint can quickly become something collectors actively search for. Not because it is rare in the traditional sense of old history, but because it becomes rare within its own generation of production. And that is where attention began to grow around certain examples of the 2019 war in the Pacific Quarter. Collectors started examining rolls, searching through uncirculated sets, and reviewing coins that had been stored away almost immediately after release. They were looking for perfection. They were looking for sharpness in the strike, full detail in the soldier's uniform, clean surfaces without wear, and that untouched mint luster that only the best preserved coins can show. Because in coin collecting, perfection is its own form of rarity. A coin does not need to be centuries old to be valuable. It only needs to stand out from the rest of its kind. And when thousands or millions are produced, only a small fraction ever survive in true top-grade condition. As interest in the America the Beautiful series grew, so did appreciation for coins like this one. Not just because of their artistic designs, but because of the stories they represented. The war in the Pacific design in particular carries emotional weight, reminding people of sacrifice, endurance, and the cost of freedom in one of the most brutal theaters of war. And that emotional connection matters more than most people realize. Collectors are not only buying metal. They are preserving meaning. They are holding pieces of history that represent real events and real human experiences. Over time, certain high-grade examples of this coin began to attract stronger attention in collector communities. Not because they were era coins in dramatic ways, but because they represented pristine condition examples of a modern historical design. Coins that looked almost untouched by time, even after being released into circulation. And this is where understanding value becomes important. In numismatics, value is not fixed. It is shaped by demand, condition, and scarcity within specific grading categories. A coin that looks identical to another at first glance can have a completely different value depending on microscopic details and professional grading assessments. For example, a circulated version of this quarter may remain face value. But a flawless uncirculated specimen, especially one graded at a very high mint state level by professional grading services, can attract strong interest from collectors who are building complete high-grade sets of the series. Because collectors are not just collecting coins. They are collecting quality, consistency, and perfection across entire collections. And when a coin represents a historically significant theme like the war in the Pacific, its appeal becomes even stronger. It is no longer just about completing a set. It becomes about preserving a visual record of history in its most refined form. There is also something deeper at play here. Coins like this remind people that history is not distant. It is layered into everyday life. It exists in objects we use without thinking. It travels through hands, pockets, and time itself. And sometimes, if you pay attention, it reveals itself in unexpected ways. A simple quarter can carry the memory of war. It can represent bravery. It can reflect national history. And it can still remain small enough to be overlooked in daily life. That contrast is what makes it powerful. As more collectors continue to explore modern U.S. commemorative quarters, designs like the war in the Pacific stand out not because they are rare in the traditional sense, but because they connect emotion, history, and craftsmanship in a way that feels far greater than their size. And perhaps that is the real value behind it. Not just what it is worth in numbers, but what it represents in meaning. Because sometimes, the most important stories are not written in books or displayed in museums. Sometimes, they are carried quietly in your pocket, waiting for someone to notice. And that is where the story quietly comes full circle. Because when you look at a coin like the 2019 war in the Pacific Quarter, you start to realize it was never just about metal or currency. It was always about memory. About preserving a moment in history that shaped the world, compressed into something small enough to pass through millions of hands without being noticed. Most people will never stop to think about what is actually engraved on the coins they use every day. They will spend them, collect them loosely, or let them sit forgotten in drawers. But sometimes, in that ordinary flow of life, something extraordinary is hidden in plain sight. This coin reminds us that history doesn't always live in textbooks or monuments. Sometimes it lives in silence. Sometimes it lives in the smallest details. And sometimes it lives in something as simple as a quarter that tells a story of courage, sacrifice, and survival in the Pacific during one of the most intense wars in human history. And here is the part that makes it even more powerful. The same coin that most people treat as everyday change can become something completely different when seen through the eyes of a collector. Condition, preservation, and rarity can transform it from something common into something deeply valued. In top collectible condition, pieces from this series have attracted strong demand among collectors who are building complete historical sets of modern U.S. quarters. And that is the real message behind this story. Not that every coin is worth a fortune, but that every coin has a story. And sometimes, the difference between something ordinary and something remarkable is simply awareness. So the next time you receive change in your hand, take a moment. Look a little closer. Because history has a strange way of hiding in everyday life, and you never really know what might be sitting quietly in your pocket. Maybe it's just a quarter. Or maybe it's something far more meaningful than you ever expected. It starts with something most people would never think twice about. A small coin, sitting quietly in a drawer, maybe tossed in a jar with spare change, or forgotten inside an old wallet. Nothing special at first glance. Just another quarter passing through everyday hands. But sometimes, the most ordinary objects hide the most extraordinary stories, and this is one of those cases. In 2013, the United States Mint released a series of quarters under the America the Beautiful program, a long-running initiative designed to honor national parks and historic sites across the country. Each coin in this series carried a unique design on the back, celebrating natural wonders and cultural landmarks. One of those designs featured the iconic Mount Rushmore, the massive granite sculpture carved into the Black Hills of South Dakota, showing the faces of 4 legendary U.S. presidents. Now, this is where things begin to get interesting. Most people who handled this quarter never thought of it as anything more than currency. It passed through vending machines, cash registers, gas stations, and pockets without a second thought. But in the world of coin collectors, sometimes even the smallest detail can turn something ordinary into something extremely valuable. A slight minting variation, a rare error, or a low production batch can completely change the story of a coin. And that is exactly where the fascination begins. Imagine holding a coin that looks normal at first glance, but under closer inspection tells a different story. A story of rarity, demand, and unexpected value. Collectors around the world spend years searching for these hidden variations, sometimes going through thousands of coins just to find one that stands out from the rest. The Mount Rushmore quarter from the 2013 release became one of those coins that sparked curiosity. While millions were minted and circulated, certain versions, especially those with unusual mint characteristics or era strikes, started attracting attention from collectors. What was once pocket change slowly began transforming into something people were actively searching for. The design itself plays a big role in why this coin gained so much attention. The obverse side features the familiar portrait of George Washington, a design that has appeared on U.S. quarters for decades. But the reverse side is where the story truly comes alive. The detailed engraving of Mount Rushmore captures the faces of 4 presidents carved into stone, symbolizing leadership, strength, and American history. Surrounding the monument are natural elements like trees and landscape details that add depth and realism to the design. But collectors don't just look at beauty. They look at perfection. And perfection in minting is rare. Even a tiny deviation in the striking process can create what is known in the collecting world as an error coin. These errors might include doubling in the text, misaligned strikes, off-center designs, or unusual surface variations. While most people would see these as flaws, collectors often see them as treasures. Because flaws mean rarity, and rarity often means value. As news and discussion spread among collectors, certain versions of the 2013 Mount Rushmore quarter began gaining attention in online forums, auctions, and private collections. People started checking their change more carefully. Coin jars were emptied. Old collections were re-examined. Everyone wanted to know if they might unknowingly be holding one of these rare pieces. And this is where the excitement grows even more. Because in the world of numismatics, value is never just about age. It's about demand, condition, and rarity combined. A coin that once circulated freely can suddenly become a target for serious collectors if only a handful of rare versions exist in top condition. Some of these special quarters, particularly those in mint state condition or with verified minting errors, have been reported in collector markets to reach surprisingly high valuations. In rare cases, depending on the exact error type and grading, figures have been discussed in the thousands, and in exceptional collector-driven demand scenarios, even higher speculative valuations have been mentioned in private sales or bidding wars. But here's what makes this story truly gripping. Most people never realize they have something valuable until it's too late. A coin like this could sit in a jar for years. It could pass through dozens of hands. It could be spent on coffee, groceries, or forgotten in storage. And yet, in the right condition, it might be exactly the kind of piece that collectors are actively hunting for right now. That thought alone is what drives millions of people to start checking their change more carefully. Because imagine this for a moment. You pick up a simple quarter. You don't think much of it. It looks normal, feels normal, and blends in with everything else. But later, you discover that this exact coin matches one of the rare known variations that collectors talk about. Suddenly, that small piece of metal isn't just change anymore. It becomes a historical artifact, a collector's item, something with a story far bigger than its size. And that is the emotional pull behind coins like the 2013 Mount Rushmore quarter. It's not just about money. It's about discovery. It's about the idea that something valuable could be hiding in plain sight, waiting to be noticed. Collectors often describe this feeling as a kind of treasure hunt. Not the kind you see in movies, but a quiet, patient search through everyday life. Every coin becomes a possibility. Every detail matters. And every small difference could be the one that changes everything. As we move deeper into this story, we'll explore how these coins are evaluated, what specific features collectors look for, how grading systems determine value, and why certain examples can become so sought after in the market that they spark intense bidding interest. And most importantly, we'll uncover why some of these coins have been associated with astonishing valuations in collector circles, reaching figures that surprise even experienced numismatists. Because sometimes, history doesn't just live in museums. Sometimes, it fits right in your hand, and that is where the story reaches its final turning point. Because once collectors began studying this coin more closely, the difference between an ordinary quarter and a rare collectible became impossible to ignore. Under magnification, the smallest details started to matter more than anything else. The sharpness of the engraving, the precision of the strike, the absence of wear, and in some cases those unusual minting characteristics that were never intended to leave the production line. What makes moments like this so powerful is not just the coin itself, but the realization behind it. The understanding that value is not always visible at first glance. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't shine or glow differently from the rest. It waits, quietly, until someone knowledgeable enough takes the time to recognize what others missed. And that is exactly why coins like the 2013 Mount Rushmore quarter have become such a topic of fascination among collectors. It represents more than currency. It represents possibility. The possibility that something ordinary could hold extraordinary worth, depending on condition, rarity, and the very specific details that separate mass production from true collectible quality. Over time, as awareness grew and more collectors searched through rolls, collections, and old storage boxes, the demand for top-grade and rare variation examples increased dramatically. The best preserved pieces, especially those with verified mint characteristics and high professional grading, became extremely difficult to find in circulation. Many were already locked away in private collections, never to re-enter the market easily. And this scarcity is exactly what drives value in the collecting world. Because when something becomes hard to find, interest grows. When interest grows, competition increases. And when competition increases, values begin to rise far beyond what most people would ever expect from something as simple as a quarter. In rare, exceptional cases, when all the right factors align, perfect condition, strong collector demand, and verified rarity, this specific type of coin has reached astonishing levels in the collector market. And that is where the final reveal becomes truly shocking. Because what once passed through hands as just 25 cents has, in its most exceptional form, been valued at up to $80,000. Yes, $80,000 for a single quarter under the right circumstances. Not every coin, not even most coins, but the rare, verified, top-grade examples that meet all the strict requirements collectors look for. These are the pieces that transform an everyday object into a headline-worthy discovery. And now, the real question is not just about this coin in history, but about the coins still out there today. Sitting in drawers, jars, old collections, and forgotten boxes. Waiting quietly, just like this one once did, before anyone realized what it could become. Because in the end, this story is not just about one quarter. It is about awareness. It is about attention to detail. And it is about the hidden value that sometimes exists in the most unexpected places, right in front of us, unnoticed until the right moment changes everything. And maybe, just maybe, the next time someone checks their spare change, they will look a little closer than before.